All right, what is up, my friends? Welcome to my complete set review for Brothers War. I know Dominaria United just happened, we know Worlds just happened, but here we are with a new one. I said with a new one. There it is. Brothers War is an artifact set, sort of like it's not like a block with Dominaria United, but definitely very, very connected. Dominaria stuff, Phyrexian stuff, a lot of artifact stuff, a lot of crazy stuff going on. And so our complete set review, what we always do, every single card. We're doing limited and constructed. We're giving our awards, our best in show, our trap card, our sleeper card, and our Bombin Common. That's Bombin Common, not Bomb Uncommon, in case you all, you all think I'm saying things incorrectly. So let's start with white. Let's get things going here. And we're going to go right in. We have more to talk about. We'll talk about things after. So we'll just get going here, right? Our first card of the set review is Arianaut Calvary, a 5-mana 3/4 flyer, is a white common. It is a human soldier, and when it ETBs, put a plus encounter onto the soldier you control. This card's super solid, honestly, as far as draft commons go. A 3/4 flyer for 5 is passable for sure. Nothing exciting, but fine. But adding a counter to the board is great as well. Buffing up your board a little bit, whether on offense or on defense. This card blocks pretty well. It's not a card you're gonna be windmill slamming or anything. It's a card you could definitely end up cutting from your deck. But it's also a very solid card too. If you're in the market for a 5-drop, you can do a lot worse than limited, and then obviously non-constructed. Up next is Airlift Chaplain. 3 mana for a 1/1 flying human cleric. When it ETBs, now there's a lot of cards like this in the set. I believe there's one common in each color that has this mill effect where you mill and you get something back, and if you don't, it gets bigger. And a lot of graveyard stuff happening in this set. Always try to kind of contextualize things in white so you can have a good framework for what's going on. So when this ETBs, you mill 3. You may put a plains card or a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among the cards milled this way into your hand. If you don't, put a counter on Airlift Chaplain. So it's a 1/1 for 3 flyer that either draws a card or is a 2/2 flyer instead. That's pretty good. I think the quality of this card in your draft deck is going to be based on how much graveyard stuff you got going on. There's a lot of unearthed cards across all colors, which is kind of a big thing going on. So if you have a lot of graveyard things going on, the card gets a lot better. But if this card's going to be like a flying Satyr Wayfinder for 3, that's like fine, but not great. It's not a soldier. And if you're just putting the counter on it, it's just a 2/2 flyer for 3 with no soldier synergies, which is not very good. So I think this card's okay. I think the cards in this cycle are pretty good, but this is one of the worst ones. It's just an okay card. Just an okay card. I think white's also the least graveyardy color, but we'll say as we go on. Up next is Ambush Paratrooper. 2 mana for a 1/2 flash flyer. So an okay rate. Has 5 mana. Creatures you control get +1/+1 end of turn. So let's talk real fast about Power Stones. Power Stones we saw in the last set from Karn's Token, where there are mana rocks that only tap for non-colored spells. So activate abilities, play colorless things. You're going to be looking for mana sinks for your Power Stones in this format, and this is a pretty decent one. Any activated ability that has a lot of colorless symbols in it is good for Power Stones. So if you're Power Stoning it up, you get to pump your whole team, which is pretty good. Definitely, I think white is one of the lesser Power Stone-y colors, more of like the soldier color, so be aware of that. I would say temper expectations a little bit, but the card seems reasonable. It's a flash flyer, it's also a soldier, so reasonable. Yeah, just a pretty solid common. This is the kind of card where, like, if you're looking for a mana sink and limit, it's also reasonable too, but seems pretty good. I think if this was a 4 mana pump the team, it would be insane. Because then you can double activate on 8 mana. But as it stands, still a pretty solid card. And of course, just can dink in there. Better than like the 1-drop for 1/1 or whatever that's never going to be able to attack. This thing can dink in too, which is pretty sweet. So, moving on to Calamity's Wake. Kind of a weird sideboard card for constructed. We see here Tormod's Crypt plus silence for non-creature spells, which is usually the important thing. Usually you're not bringing in a silence effect against creature spells. So, kind of a card that might see some play in older formats. It is fairly inefficient. Of course, Tormod's Crypt costs 0, and Silence costs 1. And if those cards are available in formats you might want this, you might just want those cards instead. But it's a pretty flexible card in that respect, kind of a good safety valve. I think that you're going to be needing to stop your opponent from doing something very broken with this card to make it good. So they're playing Dredge, or they're playing Storm, because for 2 mana, this card has to knock them out. We're being compared to Rest in Peace, or being compared to actual silence or whatever, stuff like that, or 2 mana. So kind of a fringy sideboard card. Probably will see more play in older formats. Obviously not playable in limited, but interesting one. Up next is Deadly Riposte. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong or not, but if I am, sure. 2 mana for an instant, deal 3 damage attack to target tap creature. You gain 2 life. These sort of effects are always pretty man limited. Only dealing 3 and only to tap creatures is very, very awkward. This card runs into the problem of when your opponent's attacking you, all their mana is open and all their tricks are available, and you can only cast it then. You can cast it on your turn after the creatures hit you, but like that's not either great either. So this card is it's okay. It's the kind of card you don't want to take highly in your draft decks. It's okay. It's playable. It's not great. If you have better removal spells, I would not be interested in playing this card that much. But that being said, it is okay. It's not great. Up next is a classic. We got Disenchant. Boom! Our Bombin Common for white. Disenchant, of course, it's always fun seeing the contextual changes that cards have. You know, most sets Disenchant would be a sideboard card at best. Not very exciting. You'll see in black, Go for the Throat, also a cool reprint. But in this set, there are so many artifacts. There are a ton of artifacts in every color, as well as artifacts in each of the artifact. I say color, I mean color identity artifacts. This is going to be a, 1 to 2 of in your main deck for sure. Kind of like Destroy Evil was in the last format, where it's fringe, but it has so many targets, it's actually pretty solid. Definitely going to be a high pick for your white decks in draft. A good splashable card in draft. Might see a little play constructed, because it is it's not the most efficient effect, but it's reasonable for sure. For 1 mana more, you get a creature on it. We'll show you that a little bit. But as far as limited goes, this is going to be a high pick for sure. And your Bombin Common for white. That's our first award of the show. Moving on to Great Desert Prospector. 5 mana for a 3/2 Human Artificer. When it ETBs, make a Power Stone token for each other creature you control. So 5 mana for a 3/2 is a pretty bad rate. However, this is one of the bigger Power Stone creators in all of the format. So this could easily make 4 or 5 Power Stones in your draft deck. The question, of course, is, does your white deck have things to do with Power Stones? A lot of the other colors like blue or red or black are a little more Power Stone centric as far as like sacrificing artifacts or using mana. So this is the kind of card where it's a little bit off theme, but can be really, really powerful, which is interesting. So the power level of this card in your draft deck is going to vary wildly. It's going to have a very low floor, but a pretty high ceiling. It is obviously very good with that hawk that pumps the team, or fly or whatever. So definitely a high ceiling draft card. Pretty cool. Constructed, obviously not really. It's a little too expensive, but kind of a cool one, honestly. And we're going to see, Power Stones are a very unique kind of token. We've seen this a lot now when, Clues first came out, when Blood Tokens first came out, when Treasures first came out. Hard to evaluate how good a Clue is or, a Blood Token is. So we're going to see how good a Power Stone is. They're going to be pretty important and limited, I think. Up next is In the Trenches. No awards. We have a Glorious Anthem ++ here. The Mythic Glorious Anthem, white 1 for enchantment. It pumps the squad. Of course, Glorious Anthem, not really a playable card these days in Magic, but also has the ability for 6 mana, you can exile a non-land permanent you don't control until this leaves the battlefield, but only sorcery speed and only once. So a Glorious Anthem that has value as a removal spell later in the game. That's kind of cool, but I don't think it pushes it over the hump. Power creep these days, Glorious Anthem was a card from a long, long time ago that I used to play in Standard, but you need a lot more than that to be a playable Standard card at this point. We have Wedding Announcement is an army and a Glorious Anthem, other things like that. And then, so I think this card is fine. I like there's a little extra value, but I think it's a little too bad on both sides. As a 9 mana removal spell or a 3 mana Anthem, both those are pretty So I think Instructive, this card is probably not going to go all the way. It's like a very, very fringe playable. In Limited, it's an excellent first pick because it's a card, it's a removal spell and a pump spell, which is nice. There's a lot of token stuff in the format with soldier tokens, so definitely a great limited card, but Constructed, it probably just isn't quite there. Kayla's Command? Kayla's Command. I said it right.
You're saying it wrong.
I said it right. Kayla's Command. We have a new cycle of commands. Of course, commands are modal spells that allow you to choose 2 of 4 possible modes. We see here white 1. Unfortunately, a sorcery. It's kind of the death knell here. We see choose 2. Make a 2/2. We see put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control and give it double strike to end of turn. We see search for a basic plains and put it in your hand. We see gain 2 life and scry 2. So basically, this is sort of like the white Civic Wayfinder. It can be a 2/2 that gets a plains. The double strike thing is really, really awkward at sorcery speed because like they can just block it if they need to. But this is like a 3/3. This could be a Civic Wayfinder. This could be a 2/2 that gains 2 and scries 2. This could be, a plains and maybe gain some life. But the problem is this is similar to Charming Prince in that it just isn't really great at any point. So I think as far as constructed goes, this card is just not really there. It's certainly good and limited because Civic Wayfinder is a great card, limited for sure. I think as an instant, this card would have been quite good with the counter being a trick then and so on and so forth. But as a sorcery, it's just kind of underwhelming, honestly. I'm not really excited about it. Obviously, these commands have often been pretty good. But yeah, not super exciting constructed, very solid limited card. Kayla's Command. However, Kayla's Reconstruction is our best in show for white. This card is really, really cool. White, 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 X, sorcery. Look at the top 7 cards of your library and put up to X artifact and or creature cards with mana value 3 or less from among them on the battlefield. The rest go to the bottom. So, sort of like Collective Company, operating in a similar sphere where you need to build your deck in a manner where you're going to be hitting a lot of stuff. So a lot of 3 drops, or less. At 5 mana, this is a sorcery speed Collective Company that goes a little bit deeper, which is obviously a lot worse than Company, but Company is very, very good. The problem is, or the good thing is, you can go up here. So you can pay for 6 mana, you can potentially get 3 things. Now, there is a ceiling, obviously, because there needs to be enough of these things in your top 7 cards. So if you play it for X equals 7, you're probably not going to have 7 things in your top 7 cards that cost 3 or less. But I think hitting it for 3 things or even 4 things is very, very reasonable. It's a good mana sink, a good top-end card. This thing's going to be hitting cards like Brutal Cathar or other ETB effects is pretty cool. I think this card's powerful, honestly. Probably kind of a good green-white card. Kind of in a similar sphere to Storm the Festival, but I think just like maybe an actively better card, honestly, because of the flexibility of it. Has deck building restrictions for sure. Has a little bit of extra problem here with the white, white, white. But this card's super solid. I think this card is definitely a good standard card. Possibly a Pioneer card with Nykthos and things like that too. And it's artifacts or creatures, which is kind of cool as well. So, cool card. I like it a lot. And the fun build around, cool card. Great and limited if you're playing enough 3 drops because you can just kind of crank a lot of mana into it for sure. But cool card, super fun build around. I'm excited to play with it. You should be too. Best in show for white, Kyla's Reconstruction. Up next is Lay Down Arms, a card that could have also easily been best in show. I think this card is actually excellent. 1 white sorcery. Exile a target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. Now, it's funny because white has a lot of like planesy stuff. Go get a planes, put a planes in play, search for a planes, basic planes, always basic planes. And it's sort of like, why do I want to play so many planes in my deck? So here's your payoff. And at 1 mana, this is going to kill things exactly up the curve. It kills a 1-drop on 1, a 2-drop on 2, a 3-drop on 3, etc., etc. If this is an instant, I think this card would be bonkers good. Even at sorcery speed, this is a very, very efficient removal spell. Important thing also is that it exiles things too. So on turn 5, you can pay 1 mana and exile their dragon with no death trigger. So again, requires you to be playing a lot of planes in your deck, whether you're an aggro deck or a control deck. But it is a very efficient, much more efficient than any other removal spell in the format. And it exiles, which is huge because a big hole in the format right now is exiling effects for dragons and other death triggers and so on and so forth. So this card's really good. This card's super, super solid. We'll see a lot of play in Standard. Has a chance in Pioneer for sure. But powerful card. Like it a lot. In Limited, it's obviously very, very good as well. Could have easily been best in show, I think. I don't know for the flashy card, but this card is also real, real good. Loran of the Third Path. This is a finally kind of moment, right? Finally, white gets its Reclamation Sage. Fantastic. They went for a 2/1 human, which is important. It's also a legend. Vigilance when it ETBs, destroy an artifact or enchantment. That's it. No drawbacks, no caveats. Just comes into play, kills an artifact, kills an enchantment, which is very, very good. Has a lot of bells and whistles too. So it also has the ability where you tap it and you and your opponent each draw a card. That's not really super relevant for one-on-one constructed. For commander players, sure, do your politics things or whatever. But for constructed, not super exciting. But 2 Vigilance, it's a human. So this is going to see play in, honestly, probably Legacy, Modern, Company decks. They're human decks. Going to see play in Standard. ETB to kill Fable the Mirror Breaker or to kill Wedding Announcement. And the cool thing here is that Fable is still the best card in the format. And this card comes into play, kills Fable, and blocks a token. It's very hard to maintain parity with Fable the Mirror Breaker, and this card does that. So, a lot of utility in Standard, a lot of utility in older formats, in Modern Humans, in Legacy Death and Taxes. Caracas can bounce it, which is super cool. And then, of course, a great limited card because there's tons of artifacts to kill, too. So, pretty much a first a first pick in limited, and then a great constructed card. Not the kind of card that's like, gonna like a fiend to overtake the entire format, but a super, super solid card. It's gonna see a lot of play in a lot of formats. Happy to have you, Lauren. You're back. How is this happening? There's more than one Loran. This is the Disciple of History. There are like legends that are at different points in their career in this set. So this is a different time period of Loran. And Loran, Disciple of History, is an uncommon 3/3 for 4, which is, okay rate and limited. When it ETBs or another legendary creature ETBs, return an artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. This is a phenomenal limited card. A 3/3 Gravedigger is awesome. There are tons of artifacts to get back. And if you ever spike a second trigger on this with the second legend, you are way ahead in limited. So, an excellent, excellent limited card. Super, super solid. Not there constructed, but definitely a top tier limited card. Excellent. Very, very good. Lauren, get out of here. The Escape. 1 mana instant. Artifact creature gains and hex for indestructible within a turn. Scry 1. Pretty solid protection spell, honestly. The big problem with protection spells are that they often have holes, right? So we have God's Willing, which can save your creature from a removal spell, but can't save it from a wrath. Or you have, some indestructible effect that can't save it from a -X effect. So this covers most of your bases as far as saving your creature and keeping it alive. Through a wrath, through combat, through removal spells, etc. Little scry value. You're going to want to have this in a deck that actually wants to save your creatures. Perhaps this could be a card in like Historic Saram or something like that, or a Historic Heroic deck or something like that. But if you're looking for this effect, it's a pretty good version of it for constructed, although, it's kind of fringe in general. And then in limited, this card is fine. It's not the kind of trick that helps you win a combat, so it might be a little more of a sideboard card against removal-heavy decks, but still a solid card. It still doesn't work against Farewell. That is true. That is true. Let's hear it for Farewell, right? Where my Farewell fans at? So, that's the Escape. Up next is Mass Production. And who let the dogs out? What's going on here? 6 mana for 4 colorless 1/1 soldier tokens. There's like the dog card from one of the jumpstart things that costs 4 for this. Why paying 6 mana for this effect, So at 5 mana, this effect's pretty exciting. At 6 mana, it's not super great. A little pricey for sure. There obviously are soldier synergies in blue and white, which is kind of cool. So this is an okay draft card, but 6 mana is an absurd amount of mana for 4 1/1s. There are artifacts too, which is kind of nice, but yeah. Seems like mostly a fringy limited card and not too much else. Meticulous Excavation. This is a weird one. 1 mana for an enchantment. You pay 3 to return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it has Unearth, instead exile it and then return that card to its owner's hand only during your turn. So 3 mana is a lot to protect your stuff. And then 3 mana is also a lot to try and gain value off your Unearth cards. This card is probably far too clunky to ever do anything. If you flipped it, if it cost 3 and the activation cost 1, I think we're off to the races. But as it stands, this card is about as clunky as it gets. Maybe you're playing sealed deck with like a really slow deck and some ETB effects, some Unearth cards, sure. But this is a really, really slow, really, really clunky card. Not very exciting. Not very exciting at all. Up next is Military Discipline. 1 mana for a Flash Aura. Enchant creature. When it ETBs, the creature gains first strike, and it gives +1/+0. This is a pretty mopey take on Indomitable Will. Kind of like the aura that's also a trick. Because what you're leaving behind is not that exciting. +1/+0 is not a really big stat change. And while you might win a combat with it, it's not going to win that many combats. So I think the one saving grace for this card is the 1/4 Lifelinker, which we'll get to later, because making it a 2/4 Lifelinker is pretty good. But overall, this is a pretty fringe limited card. Not very exciting. Myral, Shield of Argive. Argive? I don't know, whatever. 4 mana for a 3/4 Legendary Human Soldier Mythic. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. So kind of like a Teferi-esque effect. When it attacks, make X 1/1 colorless soldier tokens, where X is the number of soldiers that you control. So, has that Teferi effect. Of course, it is much more fragile as a creature, but also has that Hero of Bladehold kind of effect too. And this card's pretty solid if you're playing a soldier deck. There are a lot of cards like this that have the ability to kind of just like snowball wildly out of control. Of course, Adeline is a very similar card to this as well. However, this is still just a 3/4 for 4 that dies and doesn't do anything immediately. If we had a way to give this thing haste, or something like that, that'd be really, really exciting. But as it stands, I think this card's a little overrated. I think it's certainly a good card. We'll probably see some play, but I think overall this card is just fine. The bar is pretty high for 4-drops that don't affect the board when they come into play. And your opponent can always just like cast their removal spell on their turn. You tap over this, you play it, and they say go, and they untap and they kill it. So card's fine. It's definitely a reasonable card. But I think the hype on this card is a little bit high. Not willing to call it a trap card. It is a playable, reasonable card. But I think people are a little too high on this card. Just a little bit. And then Unlimited it's a bomb. Slam it. It's great. Super great bomb Unlimited for sure. Up next is Phalanx Vanguard. 2 mana for a 2/2 Vigilance. So fine stats for limited. Whenever an artifact ETBs into your control, +1/+0 on the turn. This is very solid draft common. Just good attacker, good blocker. Good attack for 3 a lot of the time, which is what you want out of your 2-drop. It's a soldier, it's a human, so very solid draft common. Just good, good meat and potatoes kind of card. Power Stone Engineer. 2 mana for a 2/1. When it dies, make a Power Stone. Another solid card. It's a 2-drop that gains you value when it dies, which is great. So trade-offs like this are great. You play your 2-drop, it trades as a 3-drop or a 2-drop. You get a little extra value off of it, which is good. Again, white doesn't have as many things to do with Power Stones, but still has a lot of artifacts we'll get to as well. So 2 back-to-back meat and potatoes 2-drops. Prison Sentence. I'm so happy I get to keep them on the soundboard for the next Bronze Mythic. 3 mana for an Arrest. When an ETB Scry 2, Arrest is already a very good card in Limited, so being able to Scry 2 is great. This is a very high pick common in Limited. Not much to say. Just super high quality white removal spell. Probably one of the best white commons. Just a really, really good card. Recommission. 2 mana for a sorcery. Return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less in your river to the battlefield. If a creature ETBs this way, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This card is okay. People always overvalue cards like this. Cards like Unearth and so on and so forth, because they look at the upside without seeing how low the floor is. Unless you're self-milling and you're getting a lot of stuff into your graveyard, this is just going to be a card that's going to be dead sometimes. It will be fine sometimes. Say we're just like, we tap that 2-drop, we make a Power Stone, and then we bring it back on turn 3 as a 3/2. That's fine, but the problem with a card like this is the ceiling isn't that high. It's okay. It's maybe you get a slight upgrade to your creature, which is cool, but the floor is do nothing, because you in a board state where no one can really attack, things aren't really trading, maybe you're racing, and the card does literally stone nothing. So a card like this scares me in Limited because, again, the floor is nothing and the ceiling isn't that high, which makes it kind of unexciting to me. So I think this card's kind of a man-limited card. It's certainly playable if you're self-milling a lot, but overall, I don't know. I'm not super excited about it, honestly. And the Constructed, we're not really about that either. Not really. Unearth effects and Constructed, I think, to be really, really efficient and have a really good supporting guest. Recruitment Officer. What's pouring out for Savannah Lion, huh? Poor Savannah Lion, Human Soldier, 1 mana 2/1. So already the stats there are very, very reasonable. We've seen Enlistment Officer, we've seen Savannah Lions, but we also have a mana sync ability too. We have 4 mana to look at the top 4 cards of your library. May reveal a creature card, mana value 3 or less among them, put it in your hand, put the rest of the bottom of your library. This card's good. This card's a really solid 1-drop, The 2/1 for 1 Human Soldier, it's got 2 relevant types and a good body. And you have his mana sync ability, because the fear is you're playing white, reading you flood, right? This card just keeps drawing cards and drawing cards and drawing cards. It's also instant speed. If it's some sort of like flashy kind of deck, it'd be kind of cool, but it's hard to have enough creature cards in a deck like that. But this card's great. This card's I see a lot of play in Standard. It's a great limited card, obviously. It's a good mana sync. Could easily see play in older formats, but obviously it gets a little outclassed there. But very, very solid Standard card. Very, very solid limited card. It's great. Like it a lot. Repair and Recharge. White 3 for a sorcery. Return target enchantment, artifact, or planeswalker card. Give her to the battlefield and make a Power Stone. 5 mana Zombifies aren't great, honestly. We see these all the time, and they're just not efficient enough to really warrant the work it takes to put a card in your graveyard and then get it back. And then getting a random Power Stone is not really the extra bonus we're looking for in a card like this. We even Invoke Justice in the format, which is like return a creature and get 4 counters also, and that card's only mildly playable. So this is not a great card. It's just okay. Pretty middling card. If you're playing Limited and you're playing some big 10 drops in your deck, because there are a lot of those, which we'll see, and you have ways to self-mill also, sure, this could be a cool way to do that. But aside from that, being like a limited card, it's all that's really going on here, I think. Siege Veteran, 3 mana for a 2/2 human soldier. Beginning combat your turn, but a counter creature you control. So we see Luminarch Aspirant as a 2/2 for 3, which is not as good, but reasonable. And then whenever another non-token soldier you control dies, make a soldier token. This card's actually really good. I think I sort of overlooked this card a little bit. Similar to Luminarch Aspirant, this is not a 2/2, it's a 3/3. And it's also, like Luminarch Aspirant, this card completely by itself attacks for 4 on turn 4, which is quite good. 3 mana for a 4/4 is pretty good too. So, and then it doesn't count itself, so if they kill this, you don't get a token, but still a super solid card. If there's a soldier deck, if there's a beatdown deck, if it's a white weenie deck, this card's very, very good. The problem is there are a ton of white 3-drops right now, obviously, Adeline and so on and so forth. But this card's definitely super sweet and constructed and very playable. And then obviously a phenomenal limited card. Cards of scale unlimited are great, and this one's real, real good. Soul Partition might be one of the weirder ones here. 2 mana for an instant. Exile target non-land permanent. We stop there? That's a pretty good one, right? For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast by an opponent this way costs 2 more to cast. So sort of like a white unsummon. It's kind of a mixture between unsummon and elite spellbinder. So they play their wedding announcement and you hit this with it, and now the wedding announcement costs 5. The problem is that it's not a removal spell. They still get the card and they can cast it again later. So this is sort of like the aggro removal spell where we got to kill them before they can get use of the card. Honestly, pretty similar to Fateful Absence, although a little more flexible. Because if you give them time to use the resource you give them, it's card disadvantage. But if you're fast enough to kind of get them out of here, that could be a thing. So mostly just a tempo card in white, which is kind of cool. Probably similar to Fateful Absence, we'll see Fringe play. But overall, not the most exciting card. And then Limited this card is probably not very good. Unsummons aren't as good in Limited, so it's just okay. It's going to play worse than it reads, I think. Up next is Static Net. We have a 4 mana enchantment on the ETBs, exile on permanent you control, so a little Oblivion Ring effect. And when ETBs gain 2 life and make a Power Stone, this is a slam dunk first pick in Limited. This is a removal spell that scries 2 and ramps the Power Stone. Hard to ask for more. We see this card in every set. For the 4 mana Oblivion Ring with upside. Slam dunk first pick in Limited. And then in Constructed, probably not. But honestly, this is sort of like Binding of the Old Gods in a way. Gain 2. I misread it. Not scry 2, gain 2. Sorry. Still a little value though. Where you get to kill a thing and then ramp yourself. But Binding was quite a bit better, honestly. So probably not a Constructed, but definitely a super, super solid limited card. Splashable, great card. Survivor of Quirlos. 1 mana for a 1/1 first strike. That is a boomer card. Pay 2, exile from your graveyard, scry 2. Kind of a cute effect in that, getting some value off your creatures that have died is pretty cool. But the body here is real small. A 1/1 first strike for 1 is 2001 power level. So I don't think the slight value you get when this thing dies is really worth it. There are many better 1-drop soldiers that are even colorless, so this one kind of stinks. Not super good. Thopter Architect, 4 mana for a 2/3, pretty bad rate. When an artifact ETBs, give a creature flying. This card is also only okay and limited. The rate on the body is pretty bad, and it requires other things to happen to make this card good. Mainly playing artifacts every turn, and then even then the ceiling isn't that good. We make some things in flying, that's kind of cool. If you're playing a green-white deck with a lot of artifacts and big creatures, sure, this card is a decent way to push through. But it's a lot of work for not a lot of payoff, and again, the body is pretty bad. So pretty unlimited card. Takasia's Welcome.
It's a trap.
It's trap, folks. Welcoming Vampire this ain't, and Welcoming Vampire itself isn't even that good. They meant it for an enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures ETBs, draw a card. However, only once a turn. If that effect wasn't there, this card might actually be pretty good. You play a token maker, make 3 tokens, and draw 3 cards. Then we're talking. But this is the card where you have to look at it like this. All right, so I cast this card on turn 3. I don't affect the board. and I spent 3 mana to get nothing. The next turn, I play a creature, and I draw a card. Okay, now it's replaced itself. The next turn, I play a creature and draw a card. Now I've cast Divination on turn 3, so a time-locked Divination. That's not good either. I play a third creature and draw a third card. Now we're in the ballpark of like, this could be good, but it's taken 3 turns, and you take off turn 3. This card's pretty bad. This card is not too good at all. Welcome Vampire, the body on it was at least good, and that card still didn't see that much play. So, Welcome Vampire also a little extra value, just having toughness and attacking and blocking and so on and so forth. So, this card's pretty bad. I guess this card costs 2. We might be talking, but at 3 mana, this card is pretty unimpressive. In Limited, this card's very reasonable. Because in Limited, the game goes long enough where you can kind of skip turn 3 and then draw cards the rest of the game. So definitely a good Limited card if you're going to be tricking this almost every turn. But in Constructed, this card is a big time stinker. Union of a Third Path. 3 mana for an instant. Draw a card, then gain life, equal the number of cards in your hand. I think this card is like sneaky good, honestly. 3 mana, draw a card, gain 6 life. That's actually not bad, you know. I don't know if there's a deck that would want this card in Constructed this day and age. You know, back in the day, back in my day, when there was like people were playing Gerard's Wisdom in their main deck, cards like this have been really, really good. But it's very hard in Standard to not affect the board. So like if there is some kind of control deck, maybe this card could be cool. But it probably isn't there, honestly. Greg Orange sees this card, he's like, ooh, I can play this on my Drago deck, you know. But I don't know if that kind of play is really, really good, but it's definitely a pretty sweet card at a pretty decent rate too, honestly, you know. Gain 6, draw a card for 3 is very reasonable. And then Limited, it's a fine card if you're like controlling, probably not great, you know. In Limited, you're going to have a much harder time keeping your hand full, so not really, but I hope this card is good, basically is what I'm saying. Warlord's Elite is next, a 3 mana 4/4 common. Whew! That's big. As additional cost to cast this spell, tap to untap artifacts, creatures, or lands you control. So, 4/4 for 3 is pretty awesome, and obviously this is a way to use your power stones, a way to use your soldier tokens. I think this card's pretty solid. You're going to want to have a deck that works with it. But if you just go like 1 drop, 2 drop, tap both and cast this on turn 3, that's really good. And then sizing is not a thing that white decks usually get. Usually white creatures are much smaller, so this is a very, very solid common. Very, very solid common. Constructed, probably not. 4/4 for 3 is not. You can just do better than that in Constructed, you know, with rares and stuff. But Limited, rock solid Limited common. Yoshin Medic. 3 mana for a 1/4 lifelinker. This card's going to play a lot better than it looks. This is the card I was saying earlier about that +1/+0 aura that makes that card is a saving grace for this card. Lifelink is one of the best possible mechanics in Limited. It is so good. And this card blocks really well. It can attack a little bit and gain some life. If you have any way to augment it at all, we're talking huge here. 2/4 lifelinker, 3/4 lifelinker is insanely good. So, not a card that like you're going to be slam dunking, but a rock solid Limited card. It's a good one. And now we move on to our artifacts. Now, the way we're doing the set review is there are a lot of artifacts in this set that are color identitied into a color, right? So this is a colorless card that has a white prototype ability, which I'll get to. So I've organized all of the color identity cards into their own color. So even though this is a colorless card, you could play in your green-blue deck or whatever. It has the white prototype thing, so we're going to be doing it like that. So that's how we're doing the whole set review. So Autonomous Assembler is a 5 mana artifact creature that is a 4/5 with vigilance, has the ability to pay 1 to tap to put a counter on an assembly worker you control. There aren't that many assembly workers, so this is mostly targeting itself, but in Limited you can find some things to do with it. And then it has the prototype ability, so I'll explain what the prototype ability is. Basically, you can cast this spell with the mana cost, color, and size in the little prototype window here, right down here. Okay? And you pay that cost, you get that size, you get that colors. If you do that, this is a 2 mana 2/2 that is white with the same ability, vigilance, and add a counter on an assembly worker control. So, in Constructed, this card is not really good enough. A 2/2 for 2. It's got vigilance. The next turn, you can like attack and then pump it immediately, so it's a 3/3. That's still not that exciting in Constructed. That's not a soldier. It's an artifact, which is kind of cool, but not that exciting, you know. And then as a 5 mana 4/5, it's also not really that exciting. So this card's fine. I don't think it's really a card that make constructed. It's a great limited card. Everything you ever wanted in a draft card. It's cheap. It's expensive. It scales. It's got a good rate. But overall, I think this card is just a little below the bar on constructed, but it's a cool card for sure. Does prototype work with devotion? Yes. As far as I know, when you play it for the prototype cost, it's as if the 5 and the 4/5 are erased, and this is a white card with that mana cost and that power toughness. Moving on to Combat Thresher, and we're going to see a lot of this across the entire set, sort of giving the set kind of like a Rise of the Eldrazi feel, where there are big, expensive, colorless cards, and there are tokens that help you cast them. In Rise of the Eldrazi, it was Eldrazi Scions. In this set, it's Power Stones. And what we have here is Combat Thresher, a 7-mana 3/3 double strike. When it ETBs, you draw a card. So not the best rate, honestly. It's not the worst, I think at 6 mana, this card's actively quite good. 7 is a lot. But it has a prototype ability, so you can cast it as a 1/1 for a white and 2. So as a 3 mana 1/1 and white, that has double strike, ETBs, and draws a card. That is also, it's fine. Not super exciting. You're going to want to have ways to augment it, But if your deck is built to cast this for 7 mana, it's pretty sweet. I think this card is just a little below the bar at limited, though. I think constructed probably will make a dent. But Platoon Dispenser. Wake up, buddy. We got a sleeper card. I think this card's actually quite good. We have a 5-mana artifact creature. It's a 4/6. So a very well sized. 4/6 is really, really big. Big butt. And it has the ability, at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. So it affects the board immediately. All right, so we have this big creature. You play it. As long as I don't kill it, you get to draw a card off it immediately. It has a huge butt. It holds the ground. It attacks. And it has the activated ability pay 4 and make a soldier artifact token, which is a nice mana sink to have available too. And on top of all that, it has Unearth too. So of course, Unearth is the ability, really, really fun ability, where you get to pay the cost, return the creature from your graveyard. It has haste, and then if it would be leave the battlefield, it gets exiled instead. So at some later date, you can Unearth it, attack for 4, and then probably draw a card at the end step also. This card's really good, right? That's a lot of things happening in one card. Your Power Stones can cast this and activate the ability on it. It's huge. You can draw cards. This card's great. I think this card's a big sleeper. I'm not exactly sure where it goes. This card's really, really good. Super solid card. In limited, slam dunk, bomb rare, windmill slam, etc., etc. But yeah, this card's really, really good. There's a lot going on. I'm a big fan. That's my sleeper card for white. Platoon Dispenser. Courier has arrived. Up next is Scrap Work Cohort. 4 mana for a 3/1. When it ETPs, make a soldier token, Unearth for 3. You can see here the full Unearth text. I feel like this card is so close to being really good and limited, but 4 mana for a 3/1's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of value here. We get a 3/1 and a 1/1, and then also the ability to attack for 3 again and make another 1/1. Yeah, it's actually at a turn. Sorry, my bad. It's a sneak attack effect from your graveyard. I think at 4 mana, this card might be a little too costly, but the value is really good here. You get a 3/1 and a 1/1. They're soldiers. Later on, you get to Unearth it, attack for 3, make a 1/1. But it's clunky. I think this is the kind of card where you want to be milling this card and putting it in the graveyard and not casting it. In that case, you're spending 3 mana to deal 3 damage and get a 1/1, which is pretty good for no card lost. So that's pretty cool. So more of a self-mill card than anything else, I think. I think it's a little bit short. Still solid limited card. Constructed, obviously not. Up next is Steel Seraph. 6 mana for a 5/4 flyer. Beginning of combat, your turn. Target you control gains flying, vigilance, or lifelink until end of turn. And then it has the prototype ability for white 1. So this can be a 3/3 flyer for 3 or a 5/4 flyer for 6. This card's fine. Constructed, probably not. I don't think the stats here really make it that exciting. We have a 3/3 flyer for 3, which is like, okay. Maybe a little lifelink here and there, sure. But all in all, just not a very exciting card. And then at 6 mana, it's also not very exciting either. So I think this is a bomb unlimited and an unplayable constructed card. Just, is what it is. White has so many 3-drops, isn't even in the conversation, I don't think. But in limited, slam dunk bomb. I can't say these words. This card, 5 mana for a 4/4. When it leaves the battlefield, gains 2 life. Also has Unearth ability for 4. This is a pretty solid draft common, honestly. It's a decent size. It stabilizes well. And then later on, you just trade it off. Attacking for 4 and gaining 2 is pretty solid, honestly. So, card's sweet. I think this card is sneakily very, very good and limited. Not like very, very good, but like sneakily a solid limited card. Urza's Silix, as if Karn's Silix wasn't enough. The mana for a legendary artifact. You pay white, white, and 2 to exile this. Each player chooses 6 lands they control and destroy everything else.
Get off my plate.
Activate only as a sorcery, which is a pretty big downside. When it's put into exile from the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, search the library for a Planeswalker card. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. This is like just a really, really, really clunky card. 7 mana to Wrath is not very good. Opponent sees it coming. It's sorcery speed. They can kill it, kill it before you can use it. And then this like find a Planeswalker ability is so expensive. Seems very similar to Karn Silix in that it might see some very, very fringe play, but overall not very exciting. And then in limited, it seems somewhat similar to Karn Silix, although much harder to use. Whereas with Karn Silix, you could play like the high mana value creatures and try and get around it and break the symmetry. This card, you can't really break the symmetry. So it's probably just okay in limited. And then constructed, I don't think this is very, very exciting. But all in all, not very pumped for this card. Don't think there's much play. Veteran's Power Blade, the mana for an equipment. +2/+0. So Bone Splitter. Oh my god. Bone Splitter. Still a piece of garbage. This card could have been good if it cost 2. But at 3 mana, this card is heinously expensive. Has Equip Soldier for white or equip anything for 2. So much expensive. So much expensive. This card costs 2. I think it's actively quite good as a Bone Splitter for soldiers in limited, but this card sucks. Super, super clunky. Yoshin Frontliner. 1 mana for a 1/1 soldier. When it attacks, another creature gets +1/+1. And it has Unearth for 1 white. This card's solid. This is the kind of card, kind of like your 3-Minute Spectre kind of card, where it looks very not flashy, but you get a lot out of it, honestly. Unearth is pretty good. It's a soldier. It's an artifact. It's easy to cast. It can pump things up a little bit. Just a very solid 1-drop. Very, very reasonable card. In limited, for sure. I think Unearth is pretty good. Soldier's pretty good. And then in limited, in constructed, I think this card has a chance as well. It's not incredible, just a solid little 1-drop, and I like it. It's my kind of card. The nuts and bolts kind of cards, And that is it for white. So to recap, we have our best in show in Kayla's Reconstruction. Although it could have been Sword Splashers, honestly. We have our trap card in Tuscana's Welcome. We have our sleeper card in Platoon Dispenser. And our Bombin Common in Disenchant. So we have much more set review to do. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Am I wrong? Am I right? What do you think? We have the whole set review on YouTube as well. Blue, black, red, green, colorless, a meld section, as well as multicolored section. Look for all that. Don't forget, folks, also, we got 10 new brews. The early access event's going to be on Thursday the 10th. 10 new brews, as I always do. We also have our Pile Drivers pre-release, which is going to be happening this coming Saturday. We do this every new set. It'll be free to play for my subscribers in the Discord with prizes, free to play. Lots of fun, noon on Saturday, November 19th. So let's go. We got Blue coming up. YouTube folks, love you, like, comment, subscribe, and let's keep on going.